Knowing how to use your keyboard when debugging an application is extremely important if you want to increase your productivity. One of the things that I don't like about Visual Studio is this start button here on the toolbar. I think it promotes the bad habit of using the mouse. I've seen a lot of developers run the application using this button here. And to make the matter worse, they don't even know this way they run the application in the debug mode. When you run the application in the debug mode, Visual Studio loads extra information in the memory to provide you with the ability to debug the application. This slows down your PC and affects your productivity. You have to wait longer for the application to load and to respond to your actions. Often you just want to run the application to test your code, not necessarily to debug. Then you shouldn't waste your time and your computer's resources by going to the debug mode every time. Use the debug mode only when you're trying to fix a bug. So, how can we run the application without going to the debug mode? You press Ctrl and F5. This will compile your application and launch it faster. The application will also respond to your actions faster. If you really need to go to the debug mode, instead of pressing Ctrl and F5, press F5 only. This is equivalent to pressing the start icon here on the toolbar. So from now on, if you ever need to debug the application, make sure to use your keyboard to initiate the debugging session. So let's repeat one more time because I want to make sure you really get this. Press Ctrl and F5 to run the application and press F5 to run the application in the debug mode. Okay, now let's look at some more keyboard shortcuts that you need to know when debugging. Here in the main method, I've created a new instance of the calculator class. As you see, there is a call to the add method with 2 arguments passed. Let's say this method is not working as we expect, so we need to debug it. We start by putting a breakpoint on this line. When you insert a breakpoint and start the application in the debug mode, the application code is executed until it reaches a breakpoint and then stops there. To insert a breakpoint with the cursor on this line, press F9. Note this icon here. That represents a breakpoint. You can press F9 again to remove the breakpoint. Now we run the application in the debug mode using F5. Note that this line is highlighted. We have 2 choices now. We can step into the add method and look exactly what's happening there, or we can step over it and look at the result. From a productivity point of view, I recommend you to use a step over first and inspect the result. If the result is not what you expect, then you step into a method to find out what's going on. If you step into methods all the time, you'll waste a lot of time verifying the code that may already be working. So let's try this. With the current line highlighted, we press F10. That's the shortcut key for step over. Now we can inspect the result by hovering the mouse over this result variable here. In this case, it's okay to use your mouse to quickly inspect a few variables here and there. As you see, the value of the result is 0, whereas I expect it to be 4. So we need to step into the add method to see what's going on. There is just a tiny issue here. The execution of code is always forward only. You can't go back. As you see, the focus is currently on the console.writeLine method here. So we can't go back and step into the add method. We need to stop the debugging session and start over. To do this, press Ctrl, Shift, and F5. Okay, now we can step into the add method. To do this, we press F11. So remember this, to step over a method, you press F10, and to step into it, you press F11. These are your friends, and you'll use them forever. Okay, back to our debugging. Look where the execution is now. We can hover the mouse over these 2 arguments here to make sure they hold the right values. As you see, the input values are fine. So there must be something wrong with the logic of this method. Note that it's returning 0 instead of adding the 2 arguments together. So let's go ahead and change the code. Now we press F10 to continue the execution. And again. And again. And again. Okay, now let's inspect the result variable. It has the right value. So let's review up to this point before I show you a few more techniques. You use F5 to run the application in the debug mode. You use F10 to step over a method and F11 to step into it. Now here is a good technique. If you accidentally step into a method, but your intention was to step over it, you can always step out by pressing Shift and F11. It's very easy to memorize this. You press F11 to step into a method and Shift and F11 to step out of it. Okay, one more thing before we finish this lecture. When you're in the debug mode, it's possible to have multiple breakpoints in different parts of the code that you would like to inspect. If you press F5, the execution continues until hitting the next breakpoint. Sometimes you leave various breakpoints here and there, but you won't need them anymore. Then every time you start the debugging session, those breakpoints will get in the way and waste your time. So make sure to remove them by pressing F9 if you no longer need them. Let's recap. Press Ctrl and F5 to run the application without debugging. Press F5 to run the application in the debug mode. Press Shift and F5 to stop the debugging session. Press F9 to insert or remove a breakpoint. Press F10 to step over a method. Press F11 to step into it. And finally, press Shift and F11 to step out of it. I hope you enjoyed this lecture.